There are 46.8 millionaires worldwide. Yes, there are more millionaires in the world than the population of the entire state of California, the most populated state in the US. The problem with this number is that it doesn't tell you the whole story because 40% of all of these millionaires are in the US. In other words, the United States makes a little over 4% of the world's population, but produces almost half of the world's millionaires. And that's not by accident. Since the end of the World War II, the United States has emerged as the world superpower. The US dollar became the international currency reserve, which meant that the entire world started using the dollars as a way to preserve wealth. Until 1971, the dollar was hedged to gold. But we all know what happened next. President Nixon abandoned the gold standard, which led many to believe that's going to be the end of the dollar. But it wasn't. In fact, it only made the dollar even more powerful. The US could keep printing money whenever it needed since the entire world was ready to buy dollars. The point is, the US since then became the place that would give you the highest chance to become a millionaire. Even if you take a look at the top 10 richest people, 8 out of them have built their fortunes in the US. If these people tried to build the exact same thing in any other country, they would have failed, or at best wouldn't achieve the same level of success that they did in the US. Elon Musk is a perfect example. The guy came from South Africa, studied in Canada, but he knew that if he wants to build something huge, then the US is his only destination. But that's not the case today. The world is changing. Other countries are competing with the US, especially China. I recently came across the video Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. YouTube kept suggesting it to me every single day. I just had to watch it because it was literally everywhere. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and do that. It's a masterpiece. Since the world is changing, the rules of the game are also changing. If you want to take advantage out of this changing world, if you want to make sure you end up at the top, if you want to take advantage of these changes to build a fortune, here are 5 new rules of money that you should follow. Number 1. Get used to high inflation. If you want to understand if inflation is a problem, all you have to do is take a look at this graph. Back in the 1960s, the US was very careful with printing money since the US dollar was tied to gold. However, it still printed more money than the amount of gold it had, so in 1971, the gold standard was abandoned. And since then, the US was using the printing machine every single time it came across a crisis when lowering interest rates wasn't enough. It wasn't a big deal back in the 1980s or 90s. But after the dot-com bubble, the US rushed to print trillions of dollars. However, that was just the beginning, because a few years later in 2008, the housing market crashed. Millions of people lost their jobs. The houses they have purchased lost half of their value, but their mortgages remained the same. So a lot of borrowers defaulted on their mortgages. Some of the largest companies went bankrupt, such as Lehman Brothers. The crisis didn't just hit the US, but affected the entire world, since the world economy is deeply connected to the US. That's when the real money printing started. The Fed started buying trillions of dollars worth of mortgage-backed securities. It printed almost $3.7 trillion in total to get out of this crisis. That's when a lot of analysts began to warn us about dollar's devaluation. Every extra dollar in the economy devalues the existing banknotes in circulation. The problem is that once you get used to printing money, it is really difficult to get rid of it. When COVID hit the world, what did the Fed do? Exactly, it printed trillions of dollars. In fact, 1 out of every dollar in existence was printed in the last 24 months. That's why house prices skyrocketed. The US simply devalued the dollar again to get out of this crisis, and now it wants to do the exact same thing with student debts. But the problem is that this is unsustainable. Number 2. The US dollar will soon lose its place as the global currency reserve. The United States have already reached its peak and is on decline, and China is the new rising power, which means that the US dollar might soon be replaced by the yuan as the global reserve currency. One of the main reasons why there is always demand for the US dollar is because oil is mostly sold in dollars. If Japan wants to buy oil from the Middle East, then it has first to buy dollars in order to pay the Saudis, for example, which boosts the demand for dollars. Oil is unlike any other commodity. There is always a demand for oil, since the entire world runs on oil. Everything from planes to trucks to ships to cars run on oil and gas. Without them, society as we know it today cannot function, which kept the US dollar strong. However, it might change in the coming future, since top oil producing countries are trying to sell their oil in different currencies, which can significantly devalue the dollar. That is why hold real assets. At the end of the day, every currency is a medium of exchange. Its true purpose isn't in holding it, but in using it to exchange goods. Currencies come and go. Before the US dollar, the British pound was the global currency reserve. Prior to it was the Dutch guilder. So the wise thing would be to keep most of your wealth in real assets that would appreciate in value if the currency devalues. Since the Fed printed trillions of dollars to get out of this pandemic, house prices, for example, rose by over 20% to catch up. But these kind of changes do not happen overnight. They take years, if not decades. What matters is not to find yourself holding tons of currencies that might end up losing most of their value when these changes take place. Number 4. Keep a sharp eye. The main reason why empires fall is that they get too comfortable once they reach the top. Once you have all the power, you start getting used to a comfortable life and gradually fall into a comfort zone that weakens you day by day until you find out that your opponent has become stronger. While the US is avoiding the pain of its crisis by printing money, which led many to believe that it's going to continue forever, this never-ending printing money has an end that is not so bright. There is a great quote that says, "Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times." So the challenge is to always have the hustler's mentality. Just because everything is great today doesn't mean that it will be like that forever. Number 5. Adapt to survive. We have no idea how long the US dollar is going to be the global reserve currency. But what we know for sure is that huge changes are going to take place in the coming future. Whoever is going to take advantage out of these changes will be the new rich. Let's take an example. The United States has a strong grip on the financial sector. Visa and MasterCard literally control the entire market. But since the US isolated Russia, the world is looking for alternative ways to process payments. China, for example, has UnionPay, and Russia has one as well. But these are old systems. They have been developed to suit the traditional banking system. But now with crypto, the game is changing. Hundreds of thousands of people from China, Russia, and other countries that are thrown away from the US financial sector are using different crypto platforms to move money around. And this is just the beginning. Opportunities to develop something in this sector that would worth billions of dollars are endless. Thanks for watching, and until next time.